Um, to our viewers of the weekly panel discussions on South Sudan women intellectuals, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're watching our show from. Thank you for tuning in to our show today. Today, I have the honor of hosting our 29th discussion. However, today's discussion is a bit different from our usual discussions for two reasons. First, we are holding this discussion as an extraordinary discussion on a Sunday instead of Saturday, which is the date we normally have our discussions. And secondly, we are also hosting a male guest. Honorable Joseph Bakasoro is our first male guest on South Sudan Women Intellectuals Forum, and we are very honored to host him today. Honorable Joseph Bakasoro is the current Minister of Public Service in the national government. He was the former governor of Western Equatoria State from 2010 to 2015. He also served as a commissioner for Tombora County. In terms of education, he holds a bachelor's degree in international relations and diplomacy, as well as a master's degree in security and strategic studies. In addition to what I've mentioned, Honorable Bakasoro served as the former SSRA Secretary for Yambo and Tombora counties from 1993 to 1999, and he was also the former youth leader for the Diocese of Tombora from 1986 to 1990. Your Excellency, you are most welcome on our show this afternoon. You're on mute. Okay. Yeah, it's still on mute. Thank you. You are most welcome on our show this afternoon from Juba. For our show today, we have chosen to focus on a very important area, which is the area of public service, and also the quest for development and forwarding women leadership, both in government and in the private sector. So, as the head of the institution tasked with managing the civil service, I have a number of questions that I would like to pose to you. My focus, I have a number of questions that I would like to pose to you. And my focus is mainly on women, though I would also touch on other parts of our society, since we all complement each other and there would be issues to do with youth, employment, and so on. So in relation to women in government, my first question is on the issue of women representation. We know we have been given 35% in government. However, there's been a lack of implementation by almost all parties within government of ensuring that at least 35% of positions at low levels of government are occupied by women. And for this matter, I would like to ask, how can we ensure South Sudanese women's rights to representation in all sectors and at all levels of government, both legislative, judiciary, and executive, are respected? What is the ministry doing about it? Over to you, Your Excellency.
First of all,
yes,
I'm very privileged and honored to share my ideas with our women of South Sudan across the globe. I'm also privileged and honored to be the first male guest in this discussion. In fact, I've been expecting such kind of call so that we share our ideas with our women, whom we honored very much, we respect very much, and who also fought with us side by side during the liberation struggle. I remember that during those days, when Sudan was in a liberation struggle, women contributed very much in terms of contributing human resource for the war efforts and also contributing food for the front line. Today, I'm privileged to be with you. First of all, concerning the participation of women in the revitalized national government of South Sudan, in fact, in the agreement, it is stipulated very clear that women should have 35% representation in the government at all levels. It is true. At the same time, this revitalized agreement is very complex. First of all, there are so many parties that signed the agreement. The first bigger party is the government of South Sudan, which we call the IG, followed by IO, and then SOA, South Sudan Opposition Alliance, and then the former detainees and other opposition parties. In the sharing of positions within the government, each group were given certain percentage. And in this percentage, women have their share of 35%. In SOA, where I am, we had 3 ministerial positions. Then the 35% of 3 is automatically 1. And we have 1 female minister in the share of SOA. IO had 9 ministries. They have appointed probably 2 or 3 ministers who are female. Which brings us, there are 3. Which brings us to the point that I think they have got their 35%. In IG, they had their own share. And probably they didn't adhere to the 35% representation of women. So in total, South Sudan government is concerned and is willing to make sure that 35% of women must participate in the government. That is the fact. But the political will to implement that depends on each group. So if there are shortcomings in the representation of women in the executives, that needs only political will. And also, it depends on how many women are there to campaign for themselves so that they are represented. Because what I've realized in the past years is that there are a certain group of women who always go round. They are reappointed and reappointed. And therefore, probably when it comes to 35%, they will be the only one to campaign for the 35%. And when they get it, some of the other women who have no position and who have no voice, who have no strength, who have no capacity, also to influence the decision-making at the leadership, probably they fail to get the 35%. But nevertheless, there is willingness to make sure that women are represented in the national government. That I can assure you. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable, for that elaborate response and explanation on what different parties have done. But a point I would like to pick on is on how many women are there to campaign for themselves. And to me, this is a very good point which you raised, because when I look at South Sudan Women Intellectuals Forum, of which I have become a proud member, I feel we do have the intellects, the women with the right qualifications to be able to serve in those capacities. However, who would spearhead our needs if the women you mentioned do not fight for us? The Ministry of Labor, in its capacity as the head of the civil service, should be able to help us to find a way to enter into the system and to access those opportunities for women who are out there with the qualifications but unfortunately did not make it. So this addresses one aspect, which is the political wing of government, the executive. However, in the civil service, what steps has the ministry taken to ensure that we have women in leadership positions? And when I talk of leadership positions here, I'm referring to undersecretaries, directors generals, directors, deputy directors, and so on. Why are our numbers so small in those offices where politics is not the deciding factor, but rather meritocracy? Over to you.
Thank you. When the foundation of a building is done wrongly, the whole building also will continue to be built wrongly. I think we came to inherit
I think we have lost the Honorable Minister. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Welcome back.
Yeah, I was saying, when the foundation of a building is not very strong, then in the near future, the building will have a problem to sustain life. To be permanent. First of all, we inherited a situation whereby recruitment was not based on qualification, but it was based on who I know. And if there are few women in the government today in senior positions, one of the reasons might be our culture, where we were coming from. Do women lead men? Usually from the bush coming to now to the government, we have our own cultural setbacks. The other side of the coin is, who do I know that can recruit me? Was the trend of employment during those days. And for example, in the civil service, you excel with grades. The first grade is, for a graduate is grade 9. So if hundreds of men were employed those years in grade 9, then by now they have reached grade 4, 3, or 1, 2. And there were no representation of women adequately during those days. So, with the new phenomena, the agenda of reform in the country, the civil service at this moment is prioritizing women recruitment and employment in our policy. Whenever there is any advertisement, we make sure that at least 35% of those to get interview must be women. So in a way, we are now transcending from the crude way, the old ways of recruitment to a reform agenda where we have thousands of qualified women in South Sudan. But because of our lack of political will to make sure that at least women get that 35%, there is also a competition between men or among men and women. And since men are dominant in the leadership, they tend also to recruit more of their colleagues than women. And that brings us also to the cultural aspect where in our society, we see women as people who are second in the society, which is not the current phenomena at this moment. We don't like that to happen. Therefore, the civil service is trying its best to make sure that women representation is adequately addressed in terms of recruitment. This is the reform agenda we are going. Of course, there had been mistakes in the past, as I stated before, but we cannot remain in that mistake forever. We need to reform because we have traveled around the globe. We see that women are competing equally with the men, and this also should happen in our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. And I would like to take from where you started about when the foundation of a building is done wrong, then obviously the whole building will or is bound to collapse. It's true, recruitment was not based on qualifications in the early days. And I can attest to that, having served in the Ministry of Labor and Public Service for over 5 years. One observation that we did might not have been based on statistics, but one observation we had was that the majority of people you would find in every ministry within our government was either from the tribe of the minister or the undersecretary, because they were the ones who were bringing the people in. So this is definitely an attestation to what you mentioned about us having started wrong, but we do have a chance to fix that and do it right. And this raises a question. As you do recruitment, these days, while watching SSTV, I see this advertisement for the Ministry of Labor. And most people I have spoken to who I have been encouraging to apply kept on saying, those positions are taken. This is not a fair recruitment process, despite the fact that it has been brought on national TV and people are encouraged to apply. So, what I would like to ask is, how can you ensure that the recruitment board as well as the Civil Service Commission are fair in how they impart their duties when recruiting people into the public service? Over to you.
Thank you. First of all, we have come with the zeal to change things. And that's why the revitalized peace agreement is emphasizing on reform, both in the economic sector and in public service sector. So our interest now is that justice should prevail in terms of recruitment, and fairness should prevail, especially considering the welfare and the number of women to be recruited. You know, reform is one thing. Commitment to reform is another thing. You may sing the song of reform, like I sing the song of reform every day, but there are certain underground businesses that is going that you on the top may not be aware of. For example, may have their own interests. The recruitment board needs some capital in order to do their work very well. They are existing, and I am on top of them every week to make sure that fair recruitment is done. One thing is I give them an order. The other thing, the other side of the coin is that somebody who have grown in many years in such kind of crude way of doing things, it is not very, it is not an automatic issue that such a person will turn away automatically from the old system to the new system. It is going to take time, but as the leaders, if we continue to enforce our orders and monitor the orders we have given to our subordinate, to the director generals and to the undersecretaries, I think something somewhere will happen positive. But nevertheless, I may not denying the fact that there is a lot of anomalies, lot of mistakes, lot of shortcomings in the recruitment process because of the godfathers, the know-how, the relations, and so forth and so on. It is happening. But we need also to consider that as we are coming with the reform, it is going also to take time, and it is going to cost some of us, even our positions, to make sure that the right thing is done. So, as you have said, it is correct. What we are doing now is to make sure that fair recruitment is done. Of course, when you form a committee, the recruitment board sits, you never know what has happened to them during the night, what has happened to them behind the curtain, and then you find that a list is brought to you after an interview. Then as a boss, as a minister, you look at it and sign. And they said, this is the resolution of the committee. Meanwhile, there was some kind of games which had happened and you are not aware. But gradually, we are going forward and we shall make sure that women are recruited fairly like men. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. Thank you, Honorable. To move away from the issue of women, I would like to also emphasize on youth and employment. I joined the ministry at the age of 37, but I had people call me Binia Sukerde at that time, and I would consider myself 37 as almost middle age. That was a long time ago. These days, Honorable, we have a lot of young people who are sitting under trees. Sometimes in front of the ministry, you would see people coming to stand looking for opportunities with NGOs because within government, our retirement plan has not been put into place. Most ministries have full nominal roles. That could be true in terms of people who are supposed to have retired but are still occupying positions. But we also have nominal positions in the nominal role that are currently occupied by ghost workers. So we have a situation where young people who should deservedly be in government are not able to come in because we have retirees who cannot retire due to the absence of an operational pension system. And we also have a bloated payroll that denies them the opportunity to be recruited. What is the ministry doing about that?
Thank you. First of all, I'm encouraged that I'm talking to somebody who had been in the same ministry where I am for many years and occupying a technocrat position. For me, I'm occupying a political position. And there are issues which I'm also learning from the technocrats because as a minister, you need to learn from the technocrats who are in the ministry, which is what I'm doing all this time. In fact, it is true. There is a lot of unemployment among the youth in South Sudan. It is a fact, and I know it, and so many youths have come to my office to discuss the same. And also we interact with the youth so much. Though I'm not the youth, but I feel that I'm still at that age where we can interact with our youth and then to understand them, because understanding the youth will make you to know their problems and their issues. In fact, the reason why there is a lot of unemployment among the youth in South Sudan are many, but I will give you very few items on that. First of all, there is no proper policy of exit strategy of civil servants in South Sudan. The policy, the policy is there, but the implementation of the policy is a stumbling block for us in South Sudan. We are coming from a liberation struggle and recruited some of the liberators in the civil service. Now, if you tell anybody now that you are already 65 years and above, please, you need to exit, they will tell you, we are liberators. Where do we go? We liberated this country, we have to be there. Then you are blocked. Another issue is, yes, there is pension scheme existing, and we would like to implement it. But then, if you cannot, if there are resistance to the pension, somebody to go on pension is resisting going on pension, the nominal roll will be full of people who are occupying the positions when they are already above the required years. For example, for now we have nearly 600 people who are supposed to go on pension, but because of some political dynamics around going for pension, we are stuck. As a result, the 600 position which was supposed to be exited is there full of people who can perform but not adequately to the expectation of the country. As a result, I am unable to also promote some of the directors, some of the staff, the civil servants, from one grade to the next grade, because the grade where they are supposed to be promoted is occupied, and therefore there is no pension scheme working, there is no promotion working because all the positions are occupied. There is no recruitment taking place because there are no nominal roles that the young generation can occupy. That's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is that there are nominal roles within ministries that are empty. And when you call one of the staff, maybe the human resource officer, to give you the nominal roles, you find that there are hundreds of them in one ministry that are empty. Now the problem comes, if you recruit anybody to that position, there is no budget. You have to recruit somebody against the budget. The budget is not there. If the budget is there, it is only for the few who are already employed. So we have a complex of situation in the civil service ministry, and as a result, most of our youth are unemployed. But again, to the side of the youth, we have also our shortcomings as youth. Most of the youth, when they come to seek for employment, most of them are asking for white-collar job. And you know very well by rules and the regulations that civil service recruitment jobs, it starts with, if you are a graduate, you start with grade 9. And grade 9 is getting something like £3,000, which is more less than maybe $10 or so. So when the youth get this information, then they avoid to be recruited in this position because they are looking for higher wages. But there are standard payment in certain grades. So as they are looking for white-collar job, then they avoid getting these civil service jobs. So that is one of the issue that also is making the youth not to be recruited. The second aspect why the youth are not recruited is that they are looking for a quick fix benefit, where they need to, for example, in promotion, most of the youth whom I'm interacting with will come and ask me only that he needs to be a director general, and he's a graduate, a fresh graduate, would like to be a director general automatically. Now, according to public service regulation, this does not happen. So what do? So we continue to educate them, and then at the end of the day, we may not have youth recruited. But generally, what I'm saying is that there is a problem about the pension scheme which is not working. Therefore, we don't have enough nominal roles to recruit the youth. Thirdly, the issue of the economy of the country cannot allow us to fill all the vacancies because there is no money to pay the youth. Thank you. Back to you.
Network.
Thank you, Honorable. Ms. Anita Modi, a member of our audience who's watching this show, was asking whether we have a retirement law in South Sudan. So I would pass it on to you to answer.
Yes, there is the retirement law in South Sudan. We have even identified the retirees or those who are supposed to go on pension. We have identified them. The South Sudan, the Ministry of Public Service, called the head count for all public servants in the country, especially at the national level. And we identified certain group of people who are supposed to go on pension. The policy is there. As I said before, and you can understand me deeply, I'm saying the political will to implement that is a problem for us in South Sudan. The political will. It is there. As a minister, I can initiate or table the issue of pension, either in the council or to the leadership. But if I don't get a quick reply or a positive reply, then my hands are tied waiting for directives, because going on pension in South Sudan has a political dynamic around it. Political dynamic. Therefore, the policy is there, but the implementation is the stumbling block. Thank you.
Thank you very much for addressing the question that I had asked. However, on the issue of ghost workers, who are a big problem in our payroll, what is the ministry doing or planning to do about it?
Thank you. As I said before, last year, the Ministry of Public Service initiated a program which is called the head counts in the country. And we started with the national government institutions. And the result was so positive. It was scientifically done until we have to realize a lot of anomalies in the civil service. When the result came out, we found that there are thousands of individuals who are paid without position. That means somebody is being paid in the ministry, but he or she has no vacant post, and they are paid. This is one category of the people. The second category of people is that there are some groups or individuals who died many years ago. They are still in the payroll. There are also those who have been absent for nearly 5 to 10 years, absent, and they had been in the payroll. There are also who are paying double. One who was transferred from a state government to the national, his name appears both in the state government and in the national government. So he's being paid double salary. And so many others. Therefore, we have created what we call the payroll cleansing. We are now cleaning all the payrolls. We identify those groups in different ministries. And the public service has written to all the ministries concerned to clean the payroll. And then we control the last cleaning page in our database in the Ministry of Public Service. So, as I said earlier, all what we are doing, all what we want to do, we aim to do, needs our political will and commitment to do that. As we write to each ministry, we always monitor to make sure that they have adhered to the letter we have written to them to clean their payroll. And that takes time. Some are reluctant to do that. Some are willing to do that, but we continue. As I said before, reform is a process. Somebody who has been in a bad system or in a certain system for many years is already addicted to such kind of system. In order to move such a person from that system to the reform system, there are resistance, but we are moving forward. So the issue of ghost names may be with our commitment and political will after 1 year from today. And so probably it will be minimized or we shall deal with it totally out of question. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. And this is a problem that has afflicted our government for decades. And I believe once we do away with ghost names, we would be on the right track to having development come to our country. However, aside from ghost workers, we also have a very serious problem of unqualified workers. Several ministers in the past have made an attempt to weed out people who are unqualified. We have fake certificate holders who are currently holding positions, very high positions within government, while we also have the rightful certificate holders sitting under trees. What is the government doing to help weed out fake certificate holders?
The government is trying its best to make sure that qualified people are employed. And as I said from the beginning, we have a complex situation in South Sudan, which we need really to address it very carefully and also with the sober mind and with the commitment and the political will to do that. Yes, from the beginning, when somebody has spent nearly 10 to 15 years in a certain position, And this position was given based on relation, not qualification. For me, and for any change to take place as soon as possible, there are resistance. And this resistance is that when you ask somebody that you produce your document so that we need to complete it and to confirm your appointment and based on your qualification, it is not very easy. But we cannot also give up. We are trying our best. I agree with you. We have a lot of unqualified employees in public service, in the civil service sector. But we are giving options to some of them. Those who are able to upgrade or to get a fixed term by going back to school so that to support their employment, they are welcome. In fact, those who took this advice seriously, after 3 to 4 years, such a person has already qualified to remain in the position because he has or she has obtained a degree in a certain field that qualifies you to ascertain your position. But there are some also who are reluctant and who are also out of school age, according to them. They are the troubleshooters for us. But with this reform agenda, which we are now spearheading, we are going to make sure that only an authentic certificate is allowed for recruitment, because also we have fake degrees, fake master degrees in the hands of our South Sudanese. But the education ministry is working on that, including the foreign affairs ministry, including also the public service. If you bring your document, you have to really vet it seriously to make sure that you are qualified for the job. Of course, you know very well that I don't know what kind of education we have across Africa, not necessarily South Sudan, whereby somebody has a degree in a certain subject, in a certain field, but cannot read and write properly. So you wonder, how did such a person get a degree? And if you disadvantage such a person from recruitment, also you will be charged legally that this person has an authentic degree, but then the person cannot produce any result. Nevertheless, we are working tirelessly, education ministry, foreign affairs ministry, and public service ministry, including labor, because we are together. We are working on that policy to make sure that the qualified people are recruited. Those who got a chance already and they are already in the system, we are only trying to encourage them to go to school in order to upgrade their grades wherever they are, through getting degrees or whatever they can get to support their employment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable. A question I would like to ask is on pay disparity between the private sector and the public sector. You mentioned earlier that among some of our young graduates, we have people who would come with expectations of getting a high position because those are the high paying jobs, rather than the entry level positions of P9, which I mean at grade 9, which pays around 3,000. Now, when you go to the private sector, especially the oil sector, we have entry level positions paying in dollars, while the civil service pays in pounds. How do you address this gap that exists in our own country between the public sector and the private sector? Because we have in the NGO world also people paid highly, while government positions of the same level, requiring the same qualifications, are paying people very little. Over to you.
Thank you. Let me begin with myself. Sometimes back, some years back, when I was working with UNICEF in South Sudan, and I had my equal who was also working with me. But then I found that I'm doing everything for him. He was an expatriate, a foreigner, and I was a national. But then I was paid $2,000, and he was getting more than $10,000. Of course, maybe that is the UN policy, and that is also NGO's policy. There are differences between the policy of the government and the policy of the NGOs. Probably they gave a lot of benefits to employees with NGOs than in the civil service. But of course, it is a fact that same grade, same job done, a foreigner is paid more than a South Sudanese. I think that is really not acceptable. And the Ministry of Labor has taken this seriously now to study, and they are making now research in all the private sector institutions to see, to balance the wages of South Sudanese versus the foreigners. Because if you are doing the same work and you are paid in dollars and a high salary, while I'm being paid in South Sudanese pound, but at a low rate, I think this also will make the work redundant to the side of South Sudanese, because they are not encouraged through payment to do the work effectively. That is in place, and I can assure you that I am together in the ministry with the Minister of Labor. There is a serious investigation now, as we are talking, on this issue, and we need to really to give weight and to give value to our South Sudanese youth, to our South Sudanese employees, that also they are technocrats, more than even those whom we call the experts. I think we have more experts among women, among men, among the youth, both girls and boys. We have a lot of experts. But then we don't value them. I think we prioritize working with the expatriates better than working with our own South Sudanese people. I think this is a process, because since we are in the reform agenda, I think this is the type of reform we have undertaken now seriously to make sure that our South Sudanese are valued and then taken care of in terms of better salary for better job done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A member of our audience, Mr. Joseph Tom Luate, was asking, is there a policy to identify national positions within the UN, NGO, etc.?
You are right. Joseph is right. Yes. There are forms. Anyway, this is not my field, but I'm interfering or intervening into somebody's ministry. But now I'm addressing South Sudanese who needs also to get information. Since the minister may not be available to talk to you, I'm also entering into his own shoes to answer you. There are forms already designed, developed and designed, and have been distributed now to all the private sector institutions, and let them fill the form. And there are questions there. Which positions are you occupying? What grade? Your salary? And so forth and so on. So this is also underway going. And I'm sure after the completion of this research, we shall be able, South Sudan government will be able to identify which positions are occupied by foreigners and which position occupied by nationals? And why do they occupy those positions as foreigners that South Sudanese cannot occupy? So it is a process, and we are on the right track. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just to add on to that, the South Sudan Labor Act clearly spells out which positions should be occupied by nationals and which ones should be occupied, can be occupied by internationals. So if you have a chance, Mr. Joseph Tom Luate, please look at our South Sudan labor law. However, I have a concern, Honorable. We have a
Yes.
huge number of foreign workers in South Sudan. And when you look around, you would never find South Sudanese being allowed to take up white collar jobs in Kenya, Uganda, or even in Ethiopia, and so on. Why is this prevalent in South Sudan? And is there any policies being adopted by our country to help counter this practice in South Sudan? The
Thank you.
foreign workers are dominating the private sector. Is there anything being done by our government to address it?
Thank you. It is true, and we are also discussing this as the leaders of South Sudan, that there are so many foreigners working in South Sudan. That is a fact. We are not mistaken. They are not also mistaken. We must really be open-minded in addressing this issue. After getting our independence, or maybe after signing of the CPA in 2005, all the fighting forces came to South Sudan, to Juba, to form the government of national unity. And as a result, our neighbors who were helping us in Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, and so forth, Sudan also, they found opportunities to run to South Sudan as a new country, thinking that South Sudanese are not qualified to do any kind of job. And we allowed them to enter in big number into South Sudan. And then they began to do all types of jobs that South Sudanese could do. So they are not mistaken because we gave them the blueprints to go ahead. We gave them a blank check to work in South Sudan. That is not their mistake. We also had our own shortcomings as South Sudanese. You know, in South Sudan, we love to receive. We love to receive and to be given something. And as a result, we even refuse to do petty work, to clean around the houses, to clean the houses, to do petty work, for example, selling water in Juba. 99% of those selling water are all foreigners. And the Nile is running in the middle of Juba. And the foreigners are the one collecting our own water, selling it to us, earning money, and building their country. That is not their fault. It is our fault. Because some of us see this as not a lucrative job. We see it as it is a downtrodden job that we cannot do. And as a result, we are being served, and we accept to be served. Therefore, we left all those positions for the foreigners to occupy, and it is not their mistake. Therefore, we in the government now, we are developing policies on how we can encourage our youth to take those jobs, not by force, but through trainings. For example, we have vocational training now. They are training they are training youth in catering, in hospitality, hotel management, in certain innovations, even making bread, making bricks and building houses. There are vocational training now going on. Then, when they graduate, they will come and be very innovative, and then they will be taking those positions gradually. Because if you just say today, all foreigners go, to be frank with you, one day we shall not have water for the population of Juba. If you just say today, all foreigners must go, we shall have no water, because there's nobody who will bring water. So therefore, it is a transition that we need to move from it. But then we must move gradually, using a better policy, because the same foreigners also helped us during our liberation. But then the liberation is ended. Let us own our country. Let us own our jobs. But then we cannot own them when we don't also show willingly that we can do without them. I think the policy is there. The issue is implementation. The last point connected to that is these foreigners have some strings tied to their jobs, and we are the one tying those strings. Instead of tying the string to a South Sudanese, so that I'm employing you, you give me 10% of your wages. They only playing with the foreigners, and then the foreigners remain. And when you touch a foreigner, you have touched somebody very important. These are also some of the political dynamics that we are facing. But nevertheless, policies are there, implementation is the problem. As I stated in one of the fora, I said, South Sudan has all the necessary tools, the laws, the bills to guide the country. But we, leaders, voluntarily refuse to use those laws to guide us and protect us and manage us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate your elaboration on it, on the fact that we should not bring about that or impose a change right away, but gradually. However, it has been almost 15 years, and we have seen this trend continue. And this is where we place the blame on our leadership for not implementing a policy of nationalization. When we look at some countries like Botswana, Botswana started where we are, but today nationals get priority when it comes to jobs. And this is where we need to learn from others who have been through it and try to see how we can benefit as a people. Honorable, I have a question still back on the issue of salaries because it was not wholly addressed in your response earlier about disparities in pay between the private sector and public sector. My concern is in terms of how much people are getting within the public sector. For example, when I joined the civil service, my salary was £4,721. In those days, it was something. However, today, that same amount can be equivalent to a single meal. A doctor in South Sudan today earns £3,600, which is less than $10. What are you planning to do about that to help our professional workforce manage to earn living on the basis of the salaries that they're given? There has been no review of salaries from 2005 to date. What is the Ministry of Public Service doing about it? Thank you.
Thank you. The Ministry of Public Service has done a recommendable job on the issue of salary. We carried a scientific study last year, which ended this year in February, on the salary structure based on the market demand or the demand in the market. Yes, some years back, 1,000 pounds was equivalent to $300. And that was good enough for an employee to survive. Today, 1,000 pounds is about $2 as we talk now, because the exchange rate in the market is nearly 500 or 5. So, in fact, the salary now is really so little that one cannot survive on it. So the public service recruited university lecturers and other experts in economy in the different ministries, and then to carry out a research on how do we raise the salary from whatever we are getting now to a better market demand. And that research was completed, and the resolutions were out, and many ministries have already the resolution. We have distributed a resolution. It was also passed by the Council of Ministers, and it is on my table and on the table of all the ministries, and also on the table of the Ministry of Finance. Now comes the problem that, okay, this salary structure is better. It can help. It is not the best, but it is a bit better than what we are having now. The problem is now the economic hardship that the country is undergoing. If we cannot pay monthly salary with the old salary structure, what will happen if we need to pay the new salary structure? It is very hard. Because the example could have been that at least we are paying our civil servants monthly salary with the old structure. But we are unable to raise that amount to pay monthly salary. Then this one is probably more than, it has an increment of more than 99% or 100 and something percent. It is quadrupled, or depending anyway. The figures are there. So if grade 17 is getting probably 1,500 now with the old structure, and we have tried to balance and equate this with the market price, then we said, okay, let grade 17 get probably 30,000 or 25,000, which is a bit better for a grade 17 than the present one. But then, if you are unable to pay 1,500 monthly to grade 17, what are we going to get? 30,000 to pay monthly to grade 17. So we have an issue of liquidity in place. But your question is correct. We have done something about it, but we are waiting a better economic status in order to implement that salary structure. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this might need to be revisited in view of recent events, because when we look at the current situation in the country following the increase in the value of the dollar against the pound, even a 100% or 200 or 300% increase in salary would not make a very big difference in the life of a civil servant. Maybe we would need to look at a permanent body. We have a lot of commissions in South Sudan, but what function that has never been taken fully is on salary and remuneration review. this might need to be considered, and I would like to take this opportunity to bring it to your attention, Honorable, that maybe you should recommend a creation for a salary and remuneration review commission to help review it from time to time as we move forward, not just salaries, but even DSA and other benefits that are supposed to be given to civil servants so that they are given realistic payments commensurate with the work they're doing. One issue that I want to ask is in relation to the issue of introduction of performance appraisal in government. Almost every government across the world has taken the issue of performance seriously, and we all know that what gets measured gets done. When does South Sudan plan to have a performance appraisal system in place? Thank you.
I can remember around 2012 to 2013, we had a department of performance appraiser within the country, and it was functioning. But all these years, I don't know whether it is still there or not. Nevertheless, that is something that we can create in the country if it is not existing, because we need to know the performances of each civil servants or different institutions. So how are they performing, and what can we do to help them? So you are right. I will try to consult, because the office was in the office of the presidency. Whether it is existing, it is functioning, or it is dead, I think I need to revisit that. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that function needs to go back to your ministry, Honorable, because the Ministry of Labor and Public Service is the engine that runs the government. And with the oversight role that your ministry would have to this function, I am sure we can have a big development and a big improvement in ensuring that ministries delivered, and those who deliver are rewarded, and those who don't are sanctioned. Thank you very much.
You.
It was a pleasure really asking these questions, but there are a number of questions that have been coming up from members of the audience. And there was a question which you had answered partly, but from Mr. Wasinidu Francis about whether there is a plan to increase teachers' and doctors' salary. I believe you have partly answered that. A question I would like to ask is on, do you have any policy to help engender our identity as one nation and to bridge the prevalent tribal divide? My reason for asking that is because in the past, certain cadres within the civil service were able to work in different parts of the country and at any level of government, whether it's state or county, with the emphasis being on service delivery. Unfortunately, with the way our government is set up today, this practice has stopped, and we are restricted to work in our states of origin or the national government only. As the policymaker, what is your take on this?
Thank you, Madam. In fact, this question, if we answer it to all, I think we can take a complete 1 hour, because it is very interesting, and that is the source of the problem we have today in the country. First of all, during the liberation struggle, we were all nationals. We developed nationalism in ourselves, and that is why we were calling ourselves comrades. We are together. We are one. We have one objective, and we want to liberate our country. That was where we were during the liberation struggle. After the liberation struggle, we throw away those slogans. We forgot about them for many reasons. One of the reasons why we throw away the slogans of nationalism was the issue of poverty. After we had been poor for many years, 22 years in the bush, and came out in 2005, and people began to look money and forgot the vision and mission of the struggle. And as we were looting the resources of our own country, of our own sweat, we forgot about others, which went and developed until we got our independence in 2011. From 2011, we nearly forgot why we fought. Though not all of us, some forgot totally. So we found that money is in the country, so we don't need liberation, we don't need each other again. I take it for myself, you take it for yourself. And then the gap among the well-known, or the people with godfathers, or the people with the backing, began to grow between them and the people who do not have support, who do not have others to help them. And as a result, it devolved into hatred. We began to hate each other and forgot the liberation struggle. So after money poured into South Sudan, it brought a big gap among citizens of the country. And as such, today, we entered into what we call decentralized government. The decentralized government is either decentralized or either it is federal, unitary, it is just in the middle. This decentralized system is being used depending on your interests. If you are a decision maker, you decentralize certain powers because you are the one in power. If I'm in power, I will also decentralize what I need, and what I don't need, I will keep it to myself. That began to build differences and hatred and grudges among South Sudanese people. Then people began to demand for federal system without even identifying what type of federal system we need. And the demand for federal system did not come out of blue. It came out because of hatred. That since I am not in a system, the best thing is I must be in my own house to govern my own house, because my brother who is next door do not need me in his house and do not take care of me. So I began to demand something which we couldn't demand. And as a result, it translated itself into the state government. If you are in Warap, you don't need somebody from Wau. If I'm in Yambio, I don't need anybody from Central Equatoria, and so forth and so on. Now, this hatred began to grow without anybody to address it, to unify us, to bring us together, and to say, hey, we are going the wrong direction. This was not the vision of the liberation struggle. So this has gone to the point that even civil service is being now politicized. Civil servants are not political. They are not politicians. For example, the executive directors, the Payama administrators are the executive directors. They are not supposed to be on political, to be deployed on political ground. They are just civil servants. They can work anywhere in the country. And this is what we inherited from the British and from the Arabs. The civil servants were only civil servants without politics. But today, areas, institutions that we don't need to politicize, we have also politicized. Even the security sector, we have also politicized. This is where we are now. To the point that Even the youth, you can hear these days, the youth are now writing letters. We don't need this group to operate in our own. We don't, this thing was not there. It was not there. And we don't need the South Sudan that we fought for, we struggled to get, then we need to desist, we need to reject, and we need to abandon this kind of situation where even civil servants are not allowed to be transferred to help in civil service where they are supposed to go. So in a way, we ourselves misunderstood what is federal system, what is decentralized system, and where do we play politics versus social service? Where? We don't identify. We put a blanket policy on all the institutions of South Sudan, and this has affected the country badly. Until today, as I'm talking, if we don't reverse from that attitude, from that behavior, and leave civil service to do its work, then the country is in a dangerous foot, in a dangerous situation. Because if we politicize civil service, then we are trying to say South Sudan must collapse, which we don't like. Therefore, as you said, it is true. We have a problem in the country, and this must be addressed by all of us. We need a concerted effort to talk about it, to say, don't politicize military, don't politicize police, don't politicize all the security sector. That's one. Two, don't politicize civil service. Don't. Leave it as it is. It has its own rules and regulation. I think we shall be in the right track and move the country forward. But lastly, let us not lose hope. We are coming from a crude way of behaviors. We are coming from a war-torn situation. We are coming from an area where we suffered to get South Sudan move on. Let us not lose hope. I'm telling our audience that we must continue to table reform and then struggle to make sure that the reform takes place. Soon or later, all the complaints we are getting now will be something of the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Now I would like to take some questions from the audience. We have a question from Ms. Mary Yuang. Her question goes this way: what's the plan for paying civil servants who have not been paid for the past 6 months?
Okay. You are talking about arrears of civil servants. In fact, last month, because today is the first, last month was yesterday. Last month, the president came with a standing order that for now, the Minister of Finance have to focus on 3 areas. One is the salary, the outstanding loans, because these are loans on the government, loans of civil servants on the government. They have to be paid. Then we have to take care of the health sector, COVID-19 and so forth, and then the security sector. Therefore, there is a plan by the government to pay the outstanding loans, the outstanding areas of civil servants. I don't know when, but the plan is there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Another question from Ms. Adeng Maloka Lang. Do I have the right to claim my pension after having worked for 7 years as a government employee, but later left for the private sector?
Yes. Our pension board is functioning and functioning effectively. As I'm talking now, if you had been on pension, I will advise you, go to the pension board, ask for your file if it is there. If it is not there, bring your file. And then the pension scheme has its own laws to govern it and the regulations. That one, I'm just the head. I oversee the activities in the pension, but the activities there and the day-to-day work is by the board and the manager. So if you have any query, please, I will appeal to you to go to the pension board, and then you will be answered accordingly. Thank you.
Another question from Mr. Matora Jack. Does the government have any data on the number of NGOs and UN agencies in the country? And do they have an estimate of nationals who are in their payroll?
Probably the government might have data, and that should be in the Ministry of Labor. Maybe I didn't inform you earlier. Within the revitalized peace agreement, public service and labor had been split into two ministries. The Ministry of Public Service and Human Resource Development is one. The Ministry of Labor, which deals with the NGOs and private sector, is also one ministry. So there are certain technical questions which are supposed to be answered by the Ministry of Labor. But of course, there is no way the government of the day in South Sudan may not be able to know how the data of NGOs, both national and international in the country, because they are always registered. I'm sure the government has the data. Thank you.
Yes, and just to supplement that point for Mr. Mator, we have the South Sudan National Bureau of Statistics, which keeps track of most of the data in relation to all institutions. So definitely, we do have the information with either the Ministry of Labor or the National Bureau of Statistics. Honorable Minister, I have exhausted most of the questions that I had prepared for you today. However, we would like to hear from you what challenges are currently affecting the Ministry of Public Service and Human Resource Development, as well as what challenges are facing the country, since for us, you are representing the country. And we would also like to hear recommendations from you on the way forward. Over to you.
Thank you. First of all, I'm the most privileged individual today to talk to you, the women leaders in our country, wherever you are. It is a great opportunity. And sometimes we assume that you know everything. And we assume that we know everything. And we also assume that we are the only ones. But today, based on the questions you have given me, I'm sure we have manpower, or no, men is not men. Let me say we have human resource power, which includes men and women in the country. And we hope that when things get better and when you see opportunities coming in, we need you, especially women, to come and occupy those places, because after all, you are more accountable than men in several institutions. And we respect you for that. And soon, our country will be the best place for all if women are in the leadership. Yes, the Ministry of Public Service and Human Resource Development is trying its best in terms of reform agenda. That's our target in this period of the revitalized peace agreement. There are so many areas of reform, but we are beginning slowly, at least maybe with the head counts and with the recruitment policies and also with the cleaning of the ghost names and so forth and so on. We have big challenges in the ministry. The capacity, the human resource capacity, is lacking somehow, not completely 100%, but at least we are better off, because without proper human resource in the ministry, we cannot also be able to manage other ministries. At least we are better off than other ministries, because we have technocrats who know their work. But despite that, we have shortcomings because of the volume of work we are doing for all the government institutions in one ministry. We need more power, manpower, human resource power, and this is one of the challenges. The second challenge we are facing is the economic crisis in the country. We are unable to do our work. We are trying to establish a comprehensive database that will control the whole country civil servants, to know who is where, and who is dead, and who have been recruited, and who have a good reputation, like the instituting this performance appraisal in place for promotions. So we are lacking finance to buy equipment that we need to run this work. For the country, the broader picture for the country is that the economic crisis has affected all the institutions. And as a result, we are always crying out to our friends and partners to support the country so that we move forward, especially during this revitalized peace agreement that we have come with the agenda of reform. If you are doing reform without finance, then we are going to be in trouble, because we cannot reform when there's no money in place. The salaries are not paid on time to encourage the civil servants to do their work effectively. So at the end of the day, you work only for 2 to 3 hours, and then you get out to go to look for something that can help your children because of lack of money of payment. So the economic hardship that has hit South Sudan is a fact, and we should accept it, and we should ask our partners to support us. The second challenge the country is facing is the issue of pockets of insecurity all over the country. You know, if soldiers are not receiving their salary on time, they will go to look for where to survive. So the insecurity is caused by the holdout groups who are still fighting, who do not like to join this peace agreement, this peace implementation. And as a result, some can take advantage of that also to loot civilians in the country. I know, as some of you in the diaspora and across the country, they always talk, of course, blame the leadership for insecurity in the country. But I'm saying insecurity is all over the globe. It's not only in South Sudan, it is all over. Even in the most developed country, just imagine, within 7 days, we have 3 attacks of an individual by an individual in France. How do we call that? That is also insecurity. And so forth and so on in other countries. So we have the same situation also in the country, but we are trying our best. As I told you from the beginning, reform takes time. When you have been accustomed to bad system, to get out of that system will take hours, will take days, will take months, will take years. But since the mindset now of most of South Sudanese is that we must make a reform, we must avoid the war, I think we need also to avoid causing insecurity in the country. Lastly, my recommendation to South Sudan Women Intellectuals Forum is that don't hesitate to call other politicians, to hear from them. I think I'm so encouraged by your stand to make us talk to the public, to make us understand your reasoning. Interaction like this with women will bring us closer to each other so that we understand your challenges also, and you understand our challenges. But I would like to encourage you that please, instead of only asking for 35% from the government, I need you to encourage, go to school campaign for girls, go to school campaign, because temporarily few women are occupying the 35% in the government. But in the future, I don't like any woman to ask for 35%. I need them to ask for 100% so that they are equal to men. You compete equally. You don't. We have no right as men to give you 35%. You have the right to take whatever percent you want to take in the government, depending on your qualification. Now you are in trouble because we overlook you. We don't consider you to have more percent or to be recruited. But tomorrow, with the reform agenda and with your togetherness as women, to voice your grievances, to voice your challenges, I think we shall be forced as men to listen to you and to give you your right, and you take your right from us, rather than only sitting in the house and having domestic work. Yes, domestic work is not necessarily for women. It is for all of us. But then in our country, domestic work is only for women, which is not the right thing. I'm so happy that at times I help my wife at home with the domestic work, because this is how we are supposed to live. One body, one flesh. So I encourage you women, and I'm so happy that you will take my advice seriously, advocate, force the government, partners, all NGOs, let them invest in girls' education. If they invest in girls' education, after 10 years from today, you will not ask for 35%. You will be qualified like any person and compete for a job. Like in Europe, in the Western world, women are not again talking about 35%. Instead, the men are the one now complaining that women have occupied all the positions. We need that access to reverse itself in the near future. Thank you, and may God bless you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I believe when I say thank you, I speak for a lot of women who are watching this program today, and hopefully others who would also be willing or able to watch the video later on and hear your words of wisdom. Honorable, we thank you very much for agreeing to be our guest today. I believe through our interaction for the past 1.5 hours, we have been able to learn a lot about what your ministry is doing, and most especially what your ministry is doing for us as women to help empower us so that we also work towards the development of our country. You have epitomized the statement, or rather, the mission of the ministry, which is enshrined in the word that we coined some years back called tribe with a P. And tribe refers to teamwork, responsiveness, inclusiveness, professionalism, and equity. So, in this, we believe that the ministry continues to serve without fear or favor. Thank you very much for your time and for sharing your words of wisdom with us. A parting shot that I would like to give is that when a ministry or a government takes care of its civil servants and pays them in time, then you get value for your money in terms of the civil service servants doing their job. And when people do their job, then things get done. And when things get done, then we know that we have good performance in government, leading to development and growth of the country as a whole. With these, I would like to thank all those who tuned in today to watch our show. I appreciate the time you took out. I thank those who were able to ask questions, and I hope we have adequately answered your questions. For any questions that were not answered, we would still go back to our Facebook page and answer them. So, with this, I thank the Honorable Minister for being our guest today. I thank the team who organized this from South Sudan Women Intellectuals. We appreciate the hard work that you put into organizing these programs. And last but not least, I thank our audience. Thank you very much. You all have a good day, good morning, and good night, wherever you're tuning in from. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And have a good night, good day, good morning, good everything.
Thank
Bye.
you.